right now you might be not sure which direction to go, what choices to make. Things feel very uncertain. And we really try to stay away from politics. That's just not something that we want to bring into this podcast. But I think there's a certain part of reality when you're an entrepreneur, you have a business where not knowing how different policies and things that are going to come up may affect you. And so today we really want to dig into what we're doing, how we're approaching uncertainty, what our thoughts are around maybe what we're looking at from business and investment standpoint, how we're preparing ourselves, and open up that conversation. In no way do we have all the answers. This is really about getting you thinking and opening a dialogue and you going into your communities and having discussions and being honest about what you're going through and taking away some of this bravado that we all have to have it figured out or we all have to put on some kind of facade and just be real with people. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm Alicia St. Germain here with Jonathan Duggar, my co-host. And we are going to have some uncomfortable conversations, I think, today. Which is my favorite thing to do because I think when we can all be open with each other, a lot of great things come out of really open conversations. Jonathan and I are both coaches. Jonathan does some corporate consulting. I work with women entrepreneurs. I do work with some men, but mostly women entrepreneurs to work through the self-sabotage, the things that get in your way where you become the biggest roadblock to your success. And if anything, uncertain times will make you want to self-protect in the biggest ways. So we got onto this topic because I asked Jonathan, what are you investing in right now? And you started to share some of the things that some of your thoughts, some of what you're running into. You asked me the same thing, and we'll share with you what our conversation was. But, well, first of all, let me ask you, what are you seeing and experiencing in the world right now as regard to uncertain times? What's happening in your world?
Preface this with, if you've been listening, you realize that we are not scripted, that we often adjust on the fly as we're talking about this particular episode, even more so because we are springboarding off of a 5-minute conversation we had prior to recording this, but with some background and thinking and experience that's been going on for the past few months. So we are in some very uncertain times right now, and a lot of at least perceived instability, unstable professionally and unstable from an investment standpoint. If any of you invest in the market, you know there's been the biggest roller coaster in the market that we've seen since some of us in our entire lifetimes. So when any of us are in unstable environments, regardless personal, professional, we are biochemically wired to go into a place of protection. And for some people, protection looks like shutdown. They create this sort of psychological and emotional cocoon for themselves and stay in a place of inactivity, pretty much. Well, in my opinion, especially from a business standpoint and an investment standpoint, inactivity is one of the worst places to be. So instead, I'm going to encourage all of you to think about this from a place of adaptability and flexibility. How do I broaden my perspective? How do I get out of my comfort zone? How do I take chances? In fact, as we wrap this up, I have you all know that I like my lists. So I have a top 7 list for dealing with uncertain times that maybe we can talk through.
Oh, I think we need to just throw them out and have the conversation as we go, to be honest.
So to be honest,
yeah, that's
go back to the last episode.
2 episodes
ago. No, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. But just a little background for me personally, where this comes from. So I recently have actually lost some business in my consulting business related to some of this instability and funding being changed and certain populations being directly affected. And I have a lot of really good friends that have gone through the same thing in the research setting, in academia, in the scientific world. And for people, especially that have been doing things a certain way with a certain group for years, some as much as 30 years, from one case that I know of, your group, your peer set becomes your family. So these are big adjustments. And some of the adjustments, the outcome from that are things like moving internationally, taking their research or their scientific endeavors to an international place. So, it's talk about complete life upheaval. There's some of that definitely going on. So when you have those kind of changes, when you have that level of instability and shakeup, it causes a lot of emotional involvement, a lot of strong emotional involvement. So one of the things that I would say to everyone is that's okay. Be okay with the fact that you may be having some grief, that you are having some anger. You're going through some of those stages of grieving because it is a major life change. So what Alicia and I were talking about from an investment standpoint, though, is this idea of how do you create sort of politically resistant, recession resistant, economy resistant, or tolerant investments. Mm-hmm. And that really is being creative in a way to create or develop something or redevelop something so that it has flexibility and adaptability built into the model, built into the system.
So I want to go to what you were talking about with right now. You've been evaluating mobile home parks and like RV, 2 totally different. Interesting, because mobile homes and RV parks oftentimes get grouped together, but they are kind of quite different models because one's more like hospitality and the other one is housing.
Correct.
Which is 2 different mindsets between the 2. But I thought you said something really interesting about what you're finding as far as what's available versus what will actually make sense financially to invest in. And I'm hearing this all over the place in every kind of asset class. People are like, there's just no deals. There's just no deals.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that a little bit on what you're experiencing.
Well, if you've invested in especially multifamily or various types of housing, but specifically multifamily, so apartment buildings, or like my primary investment approach, manufactured housing communities, we saw this sort of artificial bubble created during COVID. And there was such a lack of inventory. There was a huge influx of new investors. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but more often those investors were completely not only new to the market area, they were new to investing in general. So it was kind of like playing poker with somebody that's never played before. They were all about going all in, whether it made sense or not. And unfortunately, a lot of them are reaping the consequences of that. But what that did was it caused this artificial perception that properties were worth a lot more money than they actually are, than what the market says they are, or what the market can actually tolerate. So we still have some of that sort of delusional thinking around how property should be valued. And that sometimes comes from a broker driving it. It comes from someone telling a potential seller at some point that their land was worth more than gold, but there is still some of that going on. But slowly but surely we are seeing adjustments. So I basically quit offering on properties in 2022. And just tried to enhance what I had or invest in some non-real estate related things because it was somewhat futile because of the almost a delusion is I think the best word to use, because it was not in line with reality. And that's what delusion is. But I've come full circle now to where even though there's some of that delusional thinking still going on, I'm going to do my part as the potential buyer, the potential investor, and look at properties that check the majority of the boxes, with the exception of maybe pricing, and put my offer together and make an offer in a justifiable way, because that's how I do business. I want to create an offer that's based on my perspective, but also on real data driving that perspective. So anybody says to me, how'd you come up with those numbers? I can tell them. So starting, what I said to Alicia is like, at least I've started the conversation.
Yeah.
And maybe I won't have an impactful result until a year from now, but I've started the conversation, and I always have that starting point that I can track back to now.
So
if that seller.
Yeah, it was interesting what you said. You said, I used to do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. It was like, it didn't matter what the seller was asking. It mattered what made sense to you as the investor, and how many times the seller would say like, well, such and such offered me more, or this other person offered me more. And my response was, awesome. I think you should take that. That's a really great offer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, of course, they didn't necessarily have a different offer, or they'd be back because that offer actually wasn't serious and there was no money behind that offer. So we used to do that all the time, where we did not worry about what the sellers were asking. We made offers that made sense to us. Where do you think that, why did you stop doing that? What do you think shifted mentally for you that maybe you forgot that?
Well, I think it was more a matter of adaptation during COVID. Was still trying that. So it was sort of like still taking that approach, but there was such this disconnect in terms of what was real and what was not, that it got to a place of, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. Why underwrite this deal and spend all these hours doing this when you weren't even allowed to have the conversation. So it wasn't even getting through the door. Like somebody was shutting it down before you even got through the door. And
then there were so many other buyers that it was always selling for more. But sometimes we get into like a cycle or something that starts to happen, and then we miss when the market shifts, that those offers aren't happening as much.
And one of the things I never stopped doing was monitoring the market. I still get the listings. I still talk to my wholesalers. I still keep my networks up, because I knew I wanted to come back to the business. So I do think that there are people that basically, okay, I'm taking a 5-year hiatus, and they're probably having some catch up to do if they're trying to get back into that world. Well, I've kept my networks intact. I've kept all that, my banking relationships intact. So it's sort of like the missing piece still is the alignment with what a seller's expectations are and what the market says, or what I say that I'm willing to pay. But if that's like I was saying earlier, if that's the only misalignment, that's just one thing to continue to work on, so that other boxes are aligning, are checking, are making sense now. And inventory is still a challenge to some degree, but that's where your network becomes so important, because I have a lot of go-to resources that I can say, well, I'm looking in this particular area for this particular thing. And they're like, oh, I had a conversation with so-and-so. Let me see what's going on with them. Or somebody was looking to sell 2 years ago, but it never happened. So let me see if they're still interested in you. So those kind of conversations happen all the time if you stay connected to your networks. So now it's a matter of continuing to nurture those conversations. And also, this just occurred to me, it's something that was very common and relates to what Alicia just said. Price isn't always the motivator for a seller. That's a common misconception for new investors. Well, I can't pay their price, so they won't talk to me. Well, you need to find out what truly is their motivator, and it's not always price. Sometimes it's speed, sometimes it's security, sometimes it's a combination of trustworthiness or feeling like, especially in the mobile home world, you have a lot of mom and pop sellers or owners that have had that community for years, and they want their property and their residents taken care of. And if they feel like you're going to do that, So coming in with some experience under your belt or with an attitude of creating a safe and affordable community, that's what their primary motivator is. So they might go for less money because that's what they are really, that's important to them. So,
yeah. And then you asked me, like, what are you doing? What are you investing in? Or what are you looking at? And so from my perspective, I don't think it's any secret that we've worked on the business financials and also working on repositioning some debt that we have from personal debt from 10 years of raising kids and reprioritizing things in a different way. And my reasoning for this, and the reason I share this, is because I'm starting to realize or see that financially, I'm in a very similar and much better position than I was in 2008. And I'm not saying we're repeating what happened in 2008, but what I see as different is my confidence, my mindset, my husband's willingness to invest is different. And I know in uncertain times when things shift and a lot of people are frozen, that's exactly the time that opportunity is going to come. So I've working tirelessly to make sure credit is really I have lots of credit available, lots of access to cash. I have actual cash. I am looking at my credit score. So for lending purposes, so whatever opportunity comes, we're ready.
You're positioning yourself to be able to move
deploy
quickly when you're ready.
To deploy and move quickly. And so that was the first part of that conversation. And so I would say to anybody, I've been beating this drum since January, more than that, get your financial stuff together, get yourself connected. You're no longer allowed to be I'm not good with numbers or just throwing things around to see what sticks. Because when times are good and money is easy to make, I think that happens all the time. But when times are hard, that is when people really create wealth. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have your stuff together, you don't know where your money is, you're frozen, you get your head in the sand, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. And I already missed once. I already missed once. I'm heck no, I'm not missing again. So that's one piece. And then the second thing I said to you was, I've been thinking about what's needed in the marketplace. Number one, I have kind of this passion of, I might want to find a retreat property, something that I have a really clear vision after running our retreat, seeing what worked and what needs were not met, and then trying to run another retreat on this side of the country and seeing what's not available. I'm sorry, I don't want to go on a retreat where there's 4 beds shoved in one room. No, it's not happening. It doesn't feel very retreaty. So I think there's some opportunity there, but I'm also looking at what is really needed by the masses. And so there's this aging population, and then there's this millennial population. And it's so fascinating because I took some college courses after graduation. They were the entrepreneurship path at my community college because I was trying to solve this problem of I'm not good with numbers. I don't feel like I'm good at business. But I took this marketing class and I had to write this whole research paper about generational marketing and how you market to different generations. That paper has stuck with me my entire life. So clearly there's something gold there.
Yeah, for sure.
But ultimately what I determined was baby boomers are twice as large as Gen X. And
the population
wise. Yeah. Yes. Population. It's interesting your brain went there. That's weird.
It was very literal.
But millennials the population is very similar to the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. And so it was fascinating for me because even looking at the perfect storm of 2008 and the housing, all the inventory that became available alongside of the like lending issues that happened. But also there was a problem of inventory and not enough Gen X buyers. And I never realized until recently, I was listening to someone on the Real Wealth podcast. And I was like, oh, that's why there was so much inventory, because Gen X wasn't entering the market at the same rate because there were so fewer. And so I'm really thinking about, okay, well, there's this population of baby boomers that need senior type services. This could look like housing. This could look like care. This could look like a lot of different things. And then there's this, like, I'm asking myself, what do millennials need? Because I could see, I'm wondering, this is the questions I ask myself. And if there's some expert out there that wants to come on the podcast and talk about this, like, please reach out to me. But I'm wondering, how do we transition the senior services that end up being created because of the baby boomer population to the millennial population? Because the same thing's going to happen. I'm wondering if the same thing will happen, where there's not a need for those services at that level for a period of 20 years. And how do we adjust?
And that goes back to some of the things you and I have talked about before, related with housing, particularly with having a model or a system that is flexible and adaptable, that can change over time based on the need at the time.
Yeah.
So it's also interesting, because I've had this thought, don't want to give away all my secrets, but I've had this thought. So most of you probably know that pickleball is all the rage right now, and across multi-generations, all the way from baby boomers to Gen Zers to...
Which I had never heard of pickleball ever until I heard Brene Brown talking about pickleball. And then all of a sudden pickleball was everywhere. So I'm like, oh, Brene Brown started a movement for pickleball, apparently.
But it's still fascinating to me how widespread and how cultic almost it's become. I mean, there's a frenzy around it. But I know someone that just recently took an old warehouse and turned it into indoor pickleball courts, and then bought a dilapidated apartment complex that's within walking distance of this pickleball facility they created. So they created an income stream with this pickleball, but the whole reason they bought the pickleball was to create a level of opportunity with this apartment complex that wasn't there before, because it's kind of in a off the beaten path area. It's not all that desirable. It has some competition around it that's newer, nicer, closer to other infrastructure. They are 100% pre-rented on their apartment complex because you can walk to pickleball. Plain and simple. It's just like that one little thing. So it's not always this like earth-shattering way that you adjust, but it's being aligned and in tune with a particular social phenomenon, a particular market. Like right now we have tons of markets that are smaller. Northwest Arkansas is a good example, that new construction has just gone crazy. More permits have been pulled, new construction permits have been pulled in a 2-county area in the past 5 years than there were in the previous 50 years. Think about that. So that's how population explosion and a construction explosion, that's also created a price explosion. So that market right now is suffering with lack of affordable housing for school teachers, for service workers, for nurses, for infrastructure and personnel that you have to have a thriving community. They don't have housing for them that they can afford. So again, opportunity for that's market specific, that's not likely to change anytime soon, even as the population changes. So being aligned with what you want to do and how you want to do it, and being in touch with what, like you said earlier, what's the demand? What's the need? What need can you fill? And there's always something. There's always something that's relevant for any given time.
And even looking at businesses. And, I've been following that on all the businesses that they're aging out and their kids don't want them. It's a very similar thing that you've got these older businesses that are established, and then there's less desire by the children to have them, but also it's the Gen Xers.
Yeah, exactly.
This weird middle generation that's tiny. And the economics of it blows my mind. Like just the whole sociological economic sort of thing blows my mind, but it's the same thing happening. So looking at businesses and what kind of businesses would be of service. So looking at all kinds of opportunity. And what I'm hearing you say, and I really want to land with people, is what's the need? How can you serve humanity? In what little niche, what little corner of the world do you contribute to society? I think that's a really important piece that I think sometimes gets missed when we're talking about doing what you're passionate about or doing what you love. But also, how does it serve people? Because if it is purely for you, that's a passion.
Yep.
But if it's got purpose behind it, that's what it does for other people. And so finding that place that serves your community or serves others, and then also not being like, there's so many things you could do. Why would you pick something that is purely tactical and soulless, and because you want to make money? That you're not going to have a passion. You're not going to be excited to wake up for that.
And you're going to be a lot less effective.
Yeah.
It's less likely that you'll be effective and successful if you don't have some heart behind it.
Right. So looking for that thing that aligns with your core values, your skill set, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing. And that may not be what you've always done. I think that's the other piece. I watched so many people go back to 9-to-5 jobs, like lose everything because they were unwilling to shift with the market.
Yep.
I mean, you saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So many investors ending up in foreclosure. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen again, but if you're married to a strategy or married to what you do, and you're not willing to adjust or adapt with what's culturally happening or what's popular with people or what's served. It's like, I think about desserts. Did you ever notice there seems like there's always a new dessert craze? Like first it was like cupcakes and cookies, and then it was cupcakes, and then it was donuts, and then it was, I don't know. Cronuts. Right? And so you get all these places popping up, but then they go out of fad.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be willing to reinvent, try new things, look at different things in order to continue your entrepreneurial journey.
Mm-hmm.
Being stuck in what you've always done, which we talked about that. And I thought about this, Jonathan. We said that was 2 episodes ago. I'm probably going to run this episode next. So in a few episodes, because I think it's so relevant to what we're talking about right now, what's happening right now. And I don't know if I run this a month from now, if this will even make sense, because something totally different could come up.
Is there a way that we can post the 7 tips for coping with uncertainty?
Oh, totally.
Is there a way? Let's do that, because most of them tie to something that's come up, but I kind of did each one in a little bit of an expanded form.
Okay, great. So
let's do that.
If you go to the full show notes, you can go to the full show notes, which are linked here in the episode. We'll have the 7
tips for dealing with uncertainty.
7 tips for dealing with uncertainty. Yeah, I'll post those in the show notes so people can go there to get that full list of things, because we're out of time.
Da, da, da.
So I hope that just taking you inside of one of the conversations that we're having behind closed doors, I don't know that we necessarily solved anything particular for anyone. And that really wasn't the point of this episode was to make you think of where you're operating from. Are you operating from that freeze state, or I'm just going to hold on? I'm going to do nothing because I don't know what's going to happen. And to be perfectly honest, you will never know what's going to happen because something really unexpected could happen that none of us could have ever predicted, that creates an entire chain of events that completely changes how you make money and how your business operates.
Yeah. We can see uncertainty as an excuse to tap out, sit it out, or we can see uncertainty as an opportunity to take some risks, to take some chances, to learn to do things in a different way.
Yeah. I'm taking it as an opportunity. I'm like, okay, this is exciting, because the last time I saw things get really rocky, there was a lot of transfer of wealth.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. A lot of opportunity.
And when you look at life like that, like, of course, I'm going to figure it out. And then it becomes inside you. You generate that success from inside you versus being reactive, protective. Doesn't mean be reckless. It just means, of course, you're going to figure it out.
Be brave.
Be brave. With all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.